Okay, so in this next episode, we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorite books by my friend and mentor, Stuart Wilde, who has since passed, but his teachings and books live on. So go ahead and take a listen and let me know what you think. Inside the episode, we will go over Stuart, who was kind of a controversial author and remains to be a controversial author. But I encourage you to take a look at his earlier works, who inspired so many of us to make successes of our lives during those times. So go ahead and take a look, take a listen, let me know what you think, comment below, and make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Okay, we'll see you guys.
All right, one of my favorite books of all time. If you don't have a copy of it, I strongly recommend it. And this is kind of an unusual one because it was written by a very dear friend of mine and mentor. The book is called The Trick to Money is Having Some. And it was written by a British author, a very strange man named Stuart Wilde. And this book was written, I think, in the late 80s. It's 1989 is when he copyrighted it, and it really gained popularity in the early 90s. And in his book, The Trick to Money, Stuart Wilde talks about what he called the metaphysics of money. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's more woo-woo, the law of attraction, all that stuff. And, honestly, throughout my life, I go back and forth on this stuff. I like to think that I'm a person who believes in science, in reason, in things that are quantifiable. But there's a part of me that really believes that there is something at work that we don't understand. And I don't want to name it. I think a lot of people tried to do that in the 1980s and even in the 90s and 2000s with movies like The Secret and stuff coming out. But there are things I think that any scientist would agree that we don't understand. And when it comes to money, very few people talk about, especially in a language that's palatable for the masses, about how money works. I came from a world of reading the old school guys, reading Dale Carnegie, reading Think and Grow Rich, reading these old dudes that came in the 1920s and just after that, who wrote about wealth and every man has the ability to, that kind of thing. But when I came across Stuart's book, it struck a chord. He was irreverent. He didn't care what other people thought. He wasn't your average New Age guru. And I devoured his books. Absolutely. I've got so many copies of them. I'm looking at a copy now. Almost every page is highlighted completely. Now, here's the thing. And I think this is a very interesting point to consider when you're thinking about money. Money is attracted to money. And I learned that during the ecstasy days. I was way successful before I met Stuart. And I seeked him out because he was such an impact on my life. After reading this book, The Trick to Money, I had to meet the guy. So I went to one of his seminars in a place called Sipapu in New Mexico. And I think within 5 minutes of meeting the guy, I had already given him herbal ecstasy. He was high, roaming around the mountains of New Mexico on herbal ecstasy and all kinds of other pills. I think we had a product at the time called Magic Mushrooms, and it came in a bottle that was shaped like magic mushrooms. And he just lost it. He loved it so much. Stuart, by the way, is now deceased. But Stuart was really an interesting character because he had a lifelong dance around money and how money worked. And he was a master at putting himself in deals and in situations where he would win. And that was the amazing thing. Now, check out the book, The Trick to Money, if you want to check it out. It's a little outdated. It's got a lot of 1980s lingo about spirituality and whatnot. But the fundamental principle of this book is really for me, don't major in minor things. And if you don't have it, fake it till you make it. These were critical things that he talked about. So he writes here in page 53 of his book, if you don't have it, don't lose heart, hang on. In the meantime, you're going to have to work on your energy. For at this level, currency is energy, nothing more. As you raise your energy, people show up. And by now, you'll be comfortable billing it. It's nothing more complicated than that. As you get stronger, it gets easier and easier. Let's press on and look at energy and how you will raise yours. So he's not talking about energy in a scientific sense there. He's talking about energy that can be defined as your general vibe, how you look to the outside world and how your actions are reflected in the outside world. I don't think that's woo-woo at all, actually, if you think about it. And what Stuart talked about was changing your attitude and acting like you were wealthy. So when I was a millionaire and reading his books, I thought about being a billionaire. What would it be like if I made $1 billion? And I did it. I did all that stuff. I went on private jets and yachts, and all those people somehow materialized. And those deals came to us. And it was an amazing time. And maybe I was in the flow. Maybe I got lucky. I don't know. But something about the principles in this book worked for me at that time. So the name of the book again is called The Trick to Money is Having Some. I don't think it's a be-all end-all book. It is most certainly flawed. But I think for the price of a read, you will really get something out of it. Now, I'm going to share with you guys a story about one time when, so I read The Trick to Money, and in there, Stuart talks about letting money go. If somebody asks you for money, just give it to them. Anybody asks you for anything, give it to them. What an amazing concept. I guess that's easier when you don't have money, but I was a millionaire. And I read that part in the book. I highlighted it. I'm looking at the book right now. I highlighted it. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to do this, this has worked for me so far. I want to go from millions to billions. I got to go all in. Let's make it happen. And I decided, I didn't tell anybody about this, that anytime anybody would ask me for anything, I would just give it to them if it was within my control. The first day, a guy showed up in my office and he said, you know, Shaheen, I want to start a band. And I said, let's hear the music. And he played the music and oh my God, it was so bad. This was the worst music you had ever heard. And he said, I want to start a band and we need all new equipment. And I just need about $10,000 to make it happen. And I grinded my teeth and cringed. But if I was going to be the man I said I was going to do it. And I went off and I wrote him a check. And he swore up and down that I would see it, that it was just a loan. And I told him I don't make loans. And I never saw that guy again. But I really did feel different after that point. The next guy that showed up in my office wanted to go skydiving in Hawaii. And he needed $5,000 for a trip for him and his family. And he just wanted to make a loan from me somehow. Wrote him a check. And this happened over and over again. I must have given away a couple $100,000s before I changed this philosophy. But I learned in that time, giving away that money, that money is just a vehicle. My old mentor, my very first mentor, used to tell me, he took me outside and he said, look, Shaheen, you see everything around you, it was sold at one point or another by someone to someone else. It's just influence. It's the easiest way to get somebody to do something. There's lots of other ways to get somebody to give you what you want. And if you can master influence, you can master that. So we'll talk about Professor Cialdini, And his work, his book called Influence, a phenomenal book. Also, his follow-up book to that called Pre-Suasion. And we may have Professor Cialdini on the podcast in the future. If you guys want, make sure to comment and send me a message, and we will try to get him in and talk to him about digital marketing, e-commerce, and the work of influence on that. But I learned, I guess, from all this stuff is detachment. And when you can detach, now I'm not recommending to anybody to give away tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, but if you can detach from the minor things, the small things, and by the way, that money was small time for me in those days, and it would come and go. But when I learned to detach from it, when I learned to detach from the power of what money meant and just understood that it was a vehicle of influence like anything else, and that it wasn't so serious, and that I could always make more, everything changed. When I took that piece of information in and really absorbed it and incorporated it, that's when we went from making hundreds of millions of dollars to $1 billion in revenue. I'll see you guys on the next episode.